Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. Thank you for tuning in this week to another podcast episode. I am your host, Brittany Ford, and I am a registered holistic nutritionist and advanced fertility nutritional practitioner. Wow, such a mouthful. A podcaster, content creator, and all things like that. I am excited to bring you today's episode. This one was really interesting. We talk all about nature and the power of nature beyond what you might already know, which is cool. So we really dive into Meredith's journey with healing with nature, how we can bring it in when we live in a big city, what are the benefits of it, things that I've noticed since I've moved to a smaller town with more nature, and the impact on your physical health, your mental health, spiritual, emotional, all of those things. So it's a pretty interesting episode, I would say, and especially for people who are kind of looking for more of a natural remedy for anything. This one is definitely for you and definitely not something to be overlooked. I want people to learn more about healing naturally, wherever you are in life, whatever path you're on, because I just think there's so much power and love and grace and success there, really, if you can embrace it. So before we dive into this episode, let's do the DM of the day. And this is the feature where I read one of your DMs out loud and answer it / respond to it, whatever it might be. You can submit yours at Biohacking Brittany on Instagram, and they are always anonymous and they're always interesting. They're always something different. So it's fun to kind of just go through them. Okay. So this one I thought was really different. It's not typically something that I actually get asked. So yeah. Okay. So I'm going to read this one. Hey, I love learning from you health-wise. I have a question I'm curious to know. So let's say in my family, heart issues / diseases occur on some of my father's side and some on his mother's side. Now, is this person almost for sure going to get the same things because of inheriting it / genes? Something which I noticed is me and my brother have the same cyst at the same area as well. Wouldn't that mean the out genetics / genes are very close? So wouldn't that mean whatever issue he has, I'll have? Kind of like some run-on sentences there. But so this is really interesting. Essentially, he is asking, hey, I have some heart issues in my family. Does that mean I'm going to have it? If me and my brother have this cyst apparently in the same place, what does that mean? So a couple of things, and this was my same response to him. So I really, really suggest that I really suggested that he look into epigenetics. I think a lot of people listening already know what epigenetics are, but essentially this is the study of science of what we can do to turn certain genes on and off. So just because you have a family history of something, that in no way means that you will have that. No way. There is no 100%, oh yes, you will have heart disease or cancer or whatever health issue or condition it is. That is not how that works, thankfully. So you can look into epigenetics, which is like I was saying, how do we turn these genes on and off? And it's a really big area of science right now that's just growing so much because we're learning that there's actually a lot you can do. Your genetics are like a blueprint. They are not they're like a rough draft. They're not set in stone. Like I said, it doesn't mean that these things are eventually going to happen. And the way that you can kind of shape them in your favor is by doing certain things to turn certain genes on and off. So a lot of it goes back to very basic healthy habits, lifestyle, nutrition, sleep, stress management. Are you eating whole foods? Are you taking supplements? Are you getting enough nutrients in? Are you exercising every single day? Are you moving your body? Are you sleeping, 7-8 hours? Also looking at things like stress management, like I said, and mental health, emotional health, everything that biohacking is essentially, or wellness even, if you zoom out a bit, even wellness. And when you practice these healthy lifestyle habits, that can really help your genes essentially not turn on in the way of a disease pathway or a chronic health condition. Like you can kind of avoid developing that. Other things that are really important would be like substance use. So think about like toxin overload. So are you smoking a lot? Are you drinking a lot? There's a lot of toxins in our environment. So we can also talk about things like plastic and things that are in our products and in our air. Where do you live? Like there's so many things. And I was him, what would I do? I would research epigenetics and understand it. And I would understand what are the biggest players that kind of turn it on and off. It's probably like sleep, nutrition, and stress would arguably be the three, and exercise. Okay, so maybe four. And I would work on those and I would try to be as healthy as I can so that I wouldn't turn those specific genes on. The second part of his question, like if you and your brother both have a cyst in the same area, that does not mean that you guys will have the same play out of what will happen in the future. His could get worse and bigger and become something that is more of a health diagnosis. Like it could be cancerous, like who knows? Whereas yours, you could like manage, or you could even put it into remission and get rid of it. So the human body is so different per person. Like there's no way that you can say this is both going to happen to us. Like I do not recommend that. The other thing that you can do is obviously get your genetics tested. So this is very helpful. And I actually don't think I told him this part, but maybe I will follow up with him. The other thing is, like get your genetics tested. And I did it through the DNA company. I think that's what they're called. Yeah. Actually, they're coming on my podcast soon. So I would get your DNA tested, get your genetics tested, and do it through one of these home companies like the DNA company, and do the full one, like the ultimate bundle, whatever it's called, because it will show you the genes that are related to heart health conditions. I did this and it actually showed me a lot. It showed me a lot about my detox pathways, my methylation pathways, my mental health. So that was a big concern that I had because my dad has quite a bit of mental health struggles with like anxiety and depression. And so that was very helpful for me to know that I actually don't have the gene variations for either of those. And so, that's just one example, but I would look into doing a test like that, and whatever your results come back with. So say they come back and they say, yeah, you know what? You actually do have the variations that make you more susceptible to heart disease. That is even more motivation for you to really hone in your lifestyle to be as healthy as it can be so that you don't turn those genes on and off. But if it comes back and it says, hey, no, you don't have the genes, that is not an excuse to not be healthy, because you can obviously still get heart disease, even if you don't have the genes for it. Okay. It can still happen. So, I mean, regardless, you really want to just try to be as healthy as you can be every single day, but it would be helpful to actually also have that extra layer of information. Okay. That's my 2 cents. If you guys have any DMs, just go for it on Instagram at biohackingbrittany, and I will answer them. I love doing it. And I think it's super fascinating. A shout out to Mimeo. Speaking of cellular health, Mimeo creates one of the best longevity supplements I've ever seen. It has 4 different ingredients in it that are biomimetic. So this means it actually copies what is in your body, these 4 different ingredients. And it is all about cellular turnover, cleaning up the cells inside and out. And it also mimics a 36-hour fast. So this is why I think a lot of women love Mimeo. I've used it. And essentially, instead of you having to fast for that long to get those cellular health benefits, you can take Mimeo. So definitely check it out. You can use my discount code biohackingbrittany, and that will save you some cash at checkout, which we love. And if you care about longevity and your cells, that is definitely something that you want to do. And a shout out to Bioptimizers. So I feel like I talk about Bioptimizers the most out of everybody. My brother just messaged me this morning asking about magnesium and how it's helping him sleep better. because he was over on the weekend and I left him a magnesium bottle on his bed and he took it with him. So Bioptimizers has really fantastic supplements. They are some of the best I've ever seen. And I've been working with Bioptimizers for like 2.5 years. Okay. Like a very long time. They're not somebody who's like new on the scene, who doesn't really know what they're doing. That's absolutely not true. They have really great products. So I use their magnesium, digestive enzymes, and probiotics. And I take their mushroom breakthrough product every afternoon. And so that's the one that I'm loving right now. It's basically like your 2 p.m. pick me up. If you're tired, if you are someone who's kind of trying to stay away from caffeine, this is really great for you. It's got lion's mane in it, reishi, and I think there's like 4 cordyceps, 4 different types of mushrooms. And these really help to have your brain kind of light up and work. So if you're somebody who gets that slump, if you're somebody who's like running around and you're a parent and you're like so tired, this is going to do way more for you than coffee will ever do. So I really suggest it. It's really great for your brain health. And I noticed a difference within probably 15 minutes of taking it. And they have the chai flavor, the salted caramel, and chocolate. I think chai is my favorite right now. Salted caramel is good. It's quite sweet. And then chocolate is like, basically it's like chocolate milk. So I make it with coconut milk and it's like delicious. So enjoy this podcast episode. I think you are going to get a lot out of it. You can follow me on Instagram at biohackingbrittany or TikTok at biohacking. And if you have any questions, I am here for you always. Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. I am so happy that you are listening today. Welcome to everyone who is new and all the past listeners. I'm excited that you are joining. I am exploring the healing power of nature today with Meredith Walters, who is an author and a life coach. Her journey has taken her from the forests of Berkeley to the heart of Atlanta, helping others find magic in both nature and their daily lives. We are going to discuss reconnecting with nature, how it can help mental health, anxiety, depression, stress, learning about body intelligence, and just simple ways that we can really bring nature more into our life, which a lot of us need if we live in cities. So, Meredith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. So I know that you have spent a lot of time reconnecting with nature in your life. How did this all kind of begin? And like, when did you start noticing like the power that can really be behind healing with nature?
Yeah. So as long as I can remember, I've always felt kind of a spiritual connection with the natural world. And I loved as a kid to go into the forests around Atlanta where I grew up and it just felt like anything was possible there. It felt magical to me. And so I would go there and make stories and hike through. And anyway, I loved it. But I kind of lost touch with that for a while. In high school, I started to focus more on the things I felt like I should be doing and my grades and, sports and extracurriculars. And I think it's not coincidental that at the same time that I was trying to focus on the things I thought I should be doing instead of what I wanted to be doing, I also started to get really depressed. So it was depression and anxiety that ultimately kind of forced me to back into nature's arms, I would say, or to really explore the healing power of the natural world. Because I tried a lot of things. I did medication for a long time and it really helped at first. And then it didn't help as much later on. And I never really wanted to be on it for the long term. So eventually I started exploring other ways of healing, and that brought me to therapy and group work and all kinds of stuff that was helpful. But it was ultimately, I think, from that type of stuff that I reconnected more with myself. And when I reconnected more with myself and my body in particular, that led me right back to the natural world. So yeah, and since then it's been kind of an exploration of lots of different ways to connect and heal in lots of different ways.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting how sometimes when we go through hard times, it actually can lead to profound realizations and then really change the trajectory of our lives. Like that, what you went through changed your career. I'm sure it changed your personal life, other people's lives. So it's honestly really inspiring. What were kind of the first few steps that you took to reconnect back to yourself and back to nature?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to say, I fully agree with what you just said. And I think if I hadn't gotten so depressed, I would have just continued on with my life with kind of a low level misery, thinking that was just normal and that was all that was possible. So I'm actually really grateful that I was forced to stop and look around and take stock and find a different way. And so that different way, the first steps were really, I'd say first step was kind of therapy and reconnecting with my emotions and my body in particular. And I think that's one of the things that nature really helps with, that I had just become so disconnected from my feelings. I thought I was in touch with my feelings, but it turned out that there were a lot I was denying or belittling or negating myself out of. And when I really kind of opened up to the wildness and the intensity of my feelings and let them be there kind of no matter what, I started to notice what was happening in my body more. And I realized over time that my body was constantly responding to my current situation with lots of great information and guidance. I just usually either wasn't paying attention or didn't know how to interpret what it was telling me. And so I kind of learned the language of my body and learned how to understand what it was telling me to do, what it was guiding me towards. And ultimately that ended up being a lot of walks in the woods. So I just started walking again through the woods pretty much every day. And it was really interesting because I would start to pass the same trees, the same rocks, the same lizards over and over. And eventually they started to feel more like acquaintances and neighbors and friends, and then eventually family. And so it was really that repetitive time in the same natural places that helped me to build relationships that were really healing. And then from there, that led me further.
I love that. Yeah. I love the repetitiveness of it. When you were doing your walks, when you were in that healing time of your life, was it silent? Like, did you listen to music or podcasts or call people? Or was it like you wanted to be fully immersed and like turned off of everything?
Yeah, I was as fully immersed as I could be. And of course, my brain kept going because it's just a constant practice of bringing my attention back from my brain and into my body and my current experience. But I feel like that's where the natural world is really helpful because it reminds us to do that, because there's always something, right? There's a breeze on our skin, or there's sunshine warming us, or there's a sound of a bird in the tree. So it's always inviting us back into the present moment in some really gentle, beautiful ways. And so, so I just wanted to be aware of all of that, because there's so much. I just noticed even when I'm hiking without, listening to a podcast or talking to a friend, just hiking, I still miss so much at that speed. And so I started to really slow down, and I realized how much more there is to sense and feel and discover when I'm going slowly and fully immersed, as you said.
I love that. I have a dog. So the minute you get a dog, it's like you're out walking all the time, which is great. Like there's so many benefits to that. That's why people recommend people get dogs, like not just the physical activity, but like getting outside, getting all the healthy bacteria, fresh air, sunshine, all these things. So I definitely do that. And I listen to podcasts a lot when I go on my walks. So I don't always fully immerse, but I will typically put only one headphone in because I like to feel a bit more connected. But then there are times when I will be walking and I will feel frustrated and irritated because of the day or something might have happened. And I will just notice that I'm not even absorbing what I'm listening to. And when I notice that, like, when you listen to a podcast or anything and you're like, oh, what did they just say? Oh, I have no idea what they're talking about anymore. Yeah. So that's when I'll pull out the headphones and I'm just like, oh, I really need to just like be here and listen to these birds and nothing else and just reconnect, because I am way too stimulated for right now.
Yeah, totally. I have that experience a lot, and it's so soothing. I feel like the sounds of nature and the experience, the speed of nature, the stimulation in nature is what my system is designed for. So it's really calming to my system, and it's kind of the fast track for reset, the reset button for me.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like how I was just like thinking about it. Like I was telling you before we started this call, like I just recently moved, and we moved to a house. So we were in a condo before this. So now we're in a house, and we moved to a small town, and our house backs onto the forest. And now, like in the mornings, if we sleep with the window open, like I actually hear the birds at 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's unbelievable. I'm so calm. I open up the window curtains and I see the sunrise coming. So I see like the pinks and the oranges, and I listen to the birds, and I'm lying in bed with my dog. And it's like, I just feel like 10 out of 10. It's like, it's just amazing compared to where I was before. We had a ground floor unit, and it was on the road at like intersection. And it would be like the morning commuters, like the traffic at 6 a.m. And like there was some birds, but nothing like that. And I was like, wow, I had no idea how peaceful it could be until I moved further into nature.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And I feel like, yeah, we can absorb the energy of the birds. They're just joyful and peaceful, and it comes through their song in the mornings. Yeah. And I often find that if I'm having a bad day or a rough time, when I go on a walk, or sometimes just sitting in my yard, I'll just kind of put out a little like request. If there's anything that can help me, please do. And I'll often find that some animal, a bird or a deer or something will visit, and then just that feeling their energy and connecting with them will just totally transform my mood.
Yeah, it's also interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. And I actually said this to my husband the other day. We were on a walk. So where we live now is like kind of like this new development, suburbia houses, but there's like the forest and the golf course and then a pond and stuff. And like I said, it's a small town in Muskoka, so it's like lake country type of vibe. And where we were before, we were just outside of Vancouver. And what I found, which I didn't really realize until we moved, was every morning I would go to walk my dog. I would always go to the forest. We were close to this forest, walk to the forest around the ocean. And I would just be so eager to get into the forest. And because I just hated the street, I hated the noise, the traffic, the commuters, all of it. And I would just be so excited to like get into the forest and escape. And then when we moved here, now like we're immersed in nature all the time. And then we go for a walk on the street, and it's not a walk in the forest. But I just said to my husband the other day, I was like, now when I walk our dog, like I'm not looking for an escape because I don't feel like I need it anymore, because we have the nature all day, every day. Like I just feel so much calmer. Like I had no idea how much I was seeking refuge in the forest when I was living in the city. Let's talk about Mimeo, a breakthrough longevity supplement that hacks your biology to help you look and feel younger. It was created by PhDs in nutrition from over 7 years of clinical research, and Mimeo was designed to mimic the longevity benefits of fasting in a simple daily pill. Not only has Mimeo been shown to extend lifespan in animals by 96%, but users have been able to take as much as 2.5 years off their biological age in just 8 weeks. How? Mimeo's groundbreaking biomimetic formula uses a patented blend of all natural metabolites that work together to help your cellular health from the inside out. First, there's OEA, which is a metabolic supercharger clinically proven to help control appetite and promote fat metabolism, so you can crush those cravings and silence food noise throughout the day. Then there's spermidine, the cellular autophagy activator, helping clear out cellular junk to boost cognition, clear brain fog, and refresh your cells. Next, there's nicotinamide, a broad spectrum NAD+ booster that's been shown to improve everything from metabolism to skin glow to immune health. And lastly, there's PEA, one of the body's most powerful rest and repair molecules that helps control inflammation, relieve discomfort, and enhance recovery so you can get that youthful energy back. Mimeo is designed to work like a super fast, super efficient fasting diet, but without actually having to fast. It's all about tapping into the power of your own biology, giving your body the cheat code to work its best, making you feel younger and healthier today. You can try Mimeo today. Use my discount code at checkout, which is biohackingbrittany, and you can get all of these benefits in a simple supplement today. Again, that's biohackingbrittany in all capitals. So definitely try it and let me know what you think.
Yeah, it's like you don't even realize how it's impacting you until you get away from it. I had that sense when I went to New York City a few years ago, and I didn't realize how agitated my nervous system had gotten until stepped into Central Park. And as soon as I saw the trees, I was like, oh my God, I felt my whole system relapse and realized how uptight I had been up to that point. But I feel like our modern world it's built kind of out of scale, or it's like a pace and a stimulation that I think for a lot of us is really not healthy for us. But because we've just had to grow up in it and get used to it, we don't even realize that, like you're saying, until we've experienced something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, like I'm someone who's pretty like tapped in and try to be healthy. And it still took me to move to like fully see like, oh, I really was like, it was not great for my nervous system. Like it was great in other ways, but like the human body really does desire that like groundness, that calmness. And it's really hard to make that decision because like you said, like our modern society is not necessarily built for all of us to live out in the forest and farm and like be disconnected and that type of thing, you know? But man, it feels good if you can somehow like make it work.
Yeah. And I think it's possible to find pieces here and there. It's just kind of finding what is it that works for your system. Because I know for me, even if I'm inside, and I can't get out and I can't get into the woods, if I can just look outside and even look at the sky or the clouds, then that can help a lot. Or just find a bare patch of dirt or, and for some people it's hearing birdsong, and for some people it's feeling sun on their skin, but there's lots of different, or just being still and going a little bit more slowly. I mean, there's different ways that we can find pieces of it. So I think it is possible no matter where we are, although it is definitely a lot easier when there's green things around us.
Yeah, absolutely. So like tying it back to like the mental health and anxiety and depression, what have you kind of seen through your personal work or your personal life and your work? Like what type of recommendation would you have for somebody who say is going through maybe just a tougher time and they're like, okay, I'm going to try this idea of like nature therapy. Like how often do they need to do it? What does it look like? Like what's kind of the dosage almost that you would recommend?
Yeah. So, I mean, as much as possible, but this is where I think it's really helpful if you can listen to your own body, because your body will tell you. And, like you were saying, you can feel it when your system relaxes. And so I think the more people can try different things and see what is it that allows their system to relax and let their body guide them in that, it's helpful. But if you're not sure, I would say, start with kind of 4 to 5 days a week, ideally. And it can be walking. For some people, walking and being in movement is easier. And then I found that that's what I needed to start with. But now one of my favorite things to do is just sit still outside in my yard. And there's something really grounding and healing about just being still. And it also allows animals to get more used to your presence. And so they'll get closer and you get to know the land really well because you see it kind of season to season and day to day. So I would say with that, and there's different studies that show different things. There's kind of different windows, I guess I'd say. I don't know all of them, but I know there's like a 20-minute window that, I think your cortisol levels drop after 20 minutes. And then there's other kind of, if you stay longer, there's other things that happen. I basically try to have at least a few times a week when I'm out for an hour, if I can, in the woods, or just a longer period of time. And then in between that, when I have my busy days, I have meetings and things and I can't get out for that long, then I'll just do, 10-minute thing. And if I can't do a 10-minute thing, I'll do a 1-minute thing because it all makes a difference.
Yeah, it really does. And I love what you said about sitting still, especially for stress, or like I guess anxiety too. But there's something about sitting still in nature that is really powerful, especially when the sun is out. Like that's what I love. I feel like and I was just doing it before this call. I had like 45 minutes between my meetings and I was like, okay, I could go sit on the couch and answer emails, or I can go sit on my deck in the sun and just like eat food and hang out with my dog for a little bit. And it was so nice because, you're just getting the vitamin D. You're not looking at a screen. And again, it's that idea of like, let me reconnect. What does my body need right now? My body doesn't need to answer emails. My body needs to like be outside and be away from technology, not more involved with it, you know?
Totally. And I don't know about you, but when I take the time to do that and just sit outside still in the sun or whatever weather, I find that I'm usually more productive because then when the time I am in front of the screen, I can actually focus and get through things a lot more quickly. I have a lot more energy and creative ideas and things. I'm thinking more clearly. Whereas if I try to, if I don't take that time, it takes just as long. It just takes longer to do everything. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's less burnout and less like eye strain or even just like strain in general from like sitting at a desk and not moving your body and blood flow, inflammation, all of these different things that I think it can make such a big difference. I'm curious how you recommend to people to bring nature into their lives. Like I know we're talking about like sitting still and walking, but like let's say, like for example, my little brother lives in Chicago, big bustling city. Like what would you recommend to him? I think he's on like the 22nd floor or something. What would you recommend to him if he works from home? Like how can he bring nature in to like kind of start healing whatever he's going through?
Yeah. Well, some people who live in big cities or towers can get on the roof. And I think that can be a nice green space. If not, and if you don't have a balcony, even just being next to a window and taking the time to look out it now and then, or open a window and get some fresh air. And then I had a friend who lived in New York who just had plants all over her apartment because she didn't have access to as much green space. So that's another way, is bringing plants inside. And I'm a big fan of connecting to nature through food because I love to eat. And so growing something you can eat, whether it's herbs or some type of fruit, I think that helps build the connection as well. But yeah, or learning. I mean, there's a lot of people who do classes on foraging, even in big cities, even in the city parks, you can find a lot of edible food. So learning about what you can eat around you is also a fun way to spend more time and connect with the landscape around you. But yeah, I mean, I think for the city, it's just whatever you can find access to, and then finding your closest park and or tree. Trees have great energy, and you can usually find a tree not too far from you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the plants is a big one. Opening the window, looking for trees is definitely helpful. It's obviously harder in like the winter, I would say, when the trees are bare and the sun goes down earlier. Like, I think that's when a lot of people obviously get like a seasonal affective disorder or depression, and they feel that like darkness kind of come in, and that can be really hard. Like that's a struggle. And I found that even when I was living in Vancouver, because it rained so much. So it was so gray. Like, it's not like it was super cold, but it was just gray. Like you would not see the sun for like weeks. Like, I'm not kidding, like weeks and weeks. And so, yeah, you can go outside and you can like walk your dog in the rain, but honestly, it's not the same. Like it's really not the same. And so I don't know. I don't know if you have any words of wisdom for the people who maybe live in like more extreme climates where they might not see the sun very often, or they have very harsh winters. Like, what do you recommend there?
Yeah, it's hard. And I empathize because I'm not good with winters. I also, lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for a long time. And there were some winters where you wouldn't see the sun for weeks. So some of the things that help me are, I think fire is one way of connecting with nature indoors, and it also brings a warmth. And so if you have a way to make a fire or just burn a candle, that is a way to kind of connect with the energy of nature and the warmth and the light. But really, I find it's not just having it burning and, while you're doing something else. It's like putting it in front of you and staring at the flame and kind of getting in that hypnotic state and just really feeling the warmth and the light of it. And then water is another way. So in the winter, I take a lot of hot baths because I feel like when I'm in the water, it has that piece of the natural world, and it's very calming to my system. And then the warmth is very soothing. So that's another thing that I do in the winter. And then I think, it's hard. So also having some compassion for yourself and knowing that, yeah, it has a big impact on your body. And I think we have this expectation that we should just be able to power through and it's no big deal, but it is a big deal. And so anything that you can do to support yourself, whether it's, going on vacation to somewhere sunny in the winter or getting, lights that you can put on yourself, or just knowing that it's a hard time and going a little easier on yourself, not trying to do so many things in the winter. Cause I think it's a time too when our bodies naturally want to shut down and rest. That's the cycle. And so allowing yourself to do less and go a little bit more inward and be a little more still, I think can help too.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said about the fire because it can be very hypnotic. And even I find that with candles, like there's something about candles. Like if I take a hot bath and then I take a hot bath and I put candles on, like there's a difference there. Like I always watch the flame with my eyes. Like it's so soothing. And it makes sense that we would feel like that because obviously flames are a part of nature and it's like this natural chemical reaction that we're watching happen, which I think is just really cool. What would you say to the people who are, potentially just lead very hectic lives, like are very busy? So say maybe they have kids, they work full time, and they kind of are in that cycle of, we go on vacation once a year to somewhere sunny like Mexico, and then I feel relaxed. And then I come back and I'm just like in the grind again. Like, how do you get those people to like stop and take in the sun or take in nature when, they're back to back every day?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it can be hard. I would say with kids, that gives the opportunity to spend time with your kids outdoors. And it can be great for parents and kids when they are able to do that because it also regulates their system and it can also give them a way to get their energy out. And there's a lot of fun things that you can do to get kids engaged, like eating, finding the edible things. Kids love that. Or, there's a lot of adventures and games that you can play. But I think for me, what I've seen work most with folks is keeping your expectations low. So knowing I think often we feel like, oh my God, I have to go out there for an hour. And if I can't do that, then it's not worth it. But really a little bit goes a long way. And you can always take a minute to just go and stand in the sun. And sometimes I do that and it actually does make a really big difference, more than you would think for the amount of time that I'm out there. So sometimes it's just finding a place in your day when you can do it. And, working with transitions can be helpful. So when you're in between activities or when you're in between going inside and out of your house, any kind of in between time can be a great time to just pause and stop and, look around you if you're outside, or go outside and look around you. One of my favorite things to do is check in with all of my senses. So, focus on what I'm seeing and then what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling on my skin. Just go through each of the senses in that way when I'm outside. That's really, really relaxing. And you can do that in, a minute. You can do it each sense for, whatever, 10 seconds or however long, 12 seconds. So I think just finding the little moments when you can squeeze it in, and then over time, those can get a little bigger, or I think people often find ideas for ways to streamline with activities they're already doing. So like if you're working on something, if you have access to outdoor space, you can take your computer out onto the deck and do it there. Then you can just look up, in between emails and look around you for a second before you look back down. So there's lots of different ways you can do it. It just takes a little bit of creativity.
I so agree. I take my laptop and work outside all the time when it's warm, like all the time, because I'm just inside all the time. Like I don't want to be inside anymore. Like I'm done with this. Like if I could be out in the sun and still see my screen somehow and figure that out, I will absolutely do that. So I really agree with that recommendation. And I also love the idea of windows. Sounds so silly, but having windows in your office, if you can. I know not everyone can, but if you can see out and see nature through your windows while you're working, oh my goodness, what a difference that makes. Like right now, I am like looking out of my window. I can see like 4 different trees. I see the grass. I see the forest further down. Like I can see so much nature, and it's so calming on my nervous system compared to just like being in a room that might not have windows or just looking at a building. So I think like if you could optimize your office, whether it's a home office or in a building, to like have some sort of nature in your view, I feel like there's got to be some sort of like health benefits to that somehow.
Yeah, there are. I mean, they've done studies, and the thing is, they find that, even having a photo of nature that you look at for 20 seconds, that will help calm the nervous system and has a lot of health benefits. And, if you have a plant and a house plant, if you can look at that, if you don't have windows, I think a lot of times my experience is that there's nature all around us and we are just usually ignoring it. So it's not so much about having to do some grand thing to go connect with nature. Nature is there. We just need to pay attention to it. So often we have a window, but and this happens to me, and even now, I love nature so much, but I'll get into a task and I will realize that an hour has gone by and I haven't looked up from my screen. So just remembering to stop periodically and look up or experience the nature that is around us, I think is really powerful and a great place to start, because for most of it's there in some way, shape, or form already.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you have kids actually or not, but I'm sure there's probably kids somehow in your life. And and it could be because I'm pregnant. So I think about this. Are you concerned about these next generations coming up that are so into technology, using iPads and not being outside nearly as much as kids once were? Like, what do you think that could potentially result in terms of like stress, mental health, nervous system, that type of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't have kids, but I am very concerned. And I don't think I think before I probably would have blamed the technology, and my husband is actually great about pointing out the good things about technology. And so it's not a problem with the technology. It's just the way we use it. And I think if we use it in moderation, and it can actually help, there's apps that can help us connect to the natural world and help us identify the plants and the animals around us and have deeper connections with them. So I think, technology can actually help that connection happen. But I do worry because I think each generation seems to be less and less connected with the natural world for lots of reasons. And I in terms of the impact, I think I'm very concerned for the impact on the world itself and the planet in terms of climate change and the extinction crisis and all kinds of other things that are happening because of our disconnection, but also tremendous impact on us personally. And, I think there's a lot that happens in terms of our attention and ability to focus when we don't connect with nature. But me personally, I think there's going to be a lot more depression, anxiety, other forms of suffering that come from that disconnection because our nervous systems are so activated all the time. And we're designed to be connected with the world around us. And when we're not, nothing can really operate as it's supposed to. And I just find that, things go wrong. And in that sense, my experience with depression, being a good thing for me feels like, and I don't want to say this, I don't want to be blasé about this because depression is it's so, so hard. And I don't want to minimize the suffering and the pain, and it can be completely overwhelming. And everyone's depression is different as well. And that said, my experience of depression is that one of the things that it does that can be really healing is that it forces us to stop and pay attention to something, just like pain when we touch a hot stove, right? The pain shows us there's something here that you need to pay attention to, as in get your hand off the hot stove. And I think depression can do the same thing for us as individuals, and it can also do the same thing for us as a society. So my sense is that as we lose more touch with nature, there's this kind of natural balancing response, which is depression, anxiety, other forms of suffering that cause enough pain that we stop. We look at what's causing, if we stop and look at what's causing the pain, we can start to see where we've lost things, where we've lost connection, and how we might find it again and repair and heal. And so that's what actually gives me hope in the face of, all of these things that are going poorly, that we have these natural responses that can help us heal, even when they're really hard.
Do you have trouble recalling names, dates, or where you left things? I definitely have experienced this. Wouldn't it be nice to feel clear-minded and energized all of the time? I know you want this, and I definitely want this as well. Biooptimizers has created a one-of-a-kind product called Mushroom Breakthrough that can supercharge your brain power. It's packed with highly concentrated mushroom extracts that science shows enhance memory, focus, processing speed, and more. Just one serving contains 5 potent superfoods like collagen and 1.2 pounds of 4 concentrated mushrooms, including lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, and chaga. This cutting edge blend is a powerful way to rebuild your brain and rewire it for maximum energy, focus, and performance in less than 30 days. After each serving of Mushroom Breakthrough, your ability to memorize and recall information will improve, and you'll get a hefty dose of antioxidants for immune support. On top of these incredible benefits, it's also delicious. It tastes like a rich chocolate elixir. Sip our smooth, delicious drink daily and notice your thinking gets crisp fast. Simply mix it with water or milk and enjoy. Or for a more potent blend, you can mix it with your morning coffee to transform it into a delicious mood-boosting mocha. Don't miss out on the brain-boosting power of this amazing new product. For an exclusive offer for my listeners only, you can go to bioptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany and use code biohackingbrittany at checkout. The great thing about Bioptimizers is that you can try it risk-free and you can use their 365-day money-back guarantee. So head over to bioptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany. Try it now to sharpen your edge and reach your potential. I actually think I'm going to go make a cup right after this. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think it's something to just, keep in mind. Yeah, I just did a podcast recently on child and teenager mental health. And it's pretty scary, actually. It's pretty scary how significant the issues are and how they're on the rise. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around it because how can an 8-year-old have so much anxiety, right? Like it's just, and I know that it's like so multifactored and like, it's not just about nature and technology. It's about like nutrition and society and like pressure to succeed and like all of these different things now. But man, it's definitely something that's on my radar. And then obviously in relation to nature as well. And there's actually, you probably know about this, but there's actually something called Nature School. And it's become quite popular here in Canada where it's like the kids spend the entire day outside, like the entire day. And so they learn like these really fundamental concepts and philosophies and things, but they do it through nature. And I think that's so cool. Like instead of sitting down and writing out your ABCs or like writing out numbers, you're out in nature and you're like counting rocks. And it's like working on your tangible skills and your physical skills. Like, I love that. Is that something that you have seen on the rise as well?
Yeah, there does seem to be more and more of it, which is really encouraging. And, to tie it back to mental health, I've heard from people who run those schools that, it can help with everything from ADHD to depression and anxiety. And it makes me remember that when I was a teen and feeling really depressed, I went away to a week-long backpacking camp. And when I got back, I thought I was cured. I was like, oh, I'm not depressed anymore. And then after a couple of weeks back home, the depression came back. But yeah, I mean, it is, those schools are so encouraging and they're doing such good work. And I think, I think there's really a lot more even than we understand that's going on when we let kids be outside all day, but it's so powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. You write about body intelligence in your work. Can you kind of explain a bit more what that means and like why you think it's like so crucial for our well-being?
Yeah. Well, the way I see it, we have 3 centers of intelligence. We have our heads and our brains, and that's, our logic, our analytical skills. It's what we tend to use the most and what we're trained to use for everything. We also have our heart centers, which are another center of intelligence and what our feelings can tell us. And then we have our body centers, what our bodies can tell us about ourselves and the world. And I just found that for me, reconnecting with my body's intelligence was huge because it has a different take than the brain. And it's more of an intuitive take. It's intuition, I think, that's kind of what I think of when I talk about body's wisdom. It's really an intuitive wisdom. And it just has such different information and guidance in our brain. So I'm not against using logic and analysis. They're great. It's just we're missing something if that's all we're ever using. So I'm all about integrating all of our centers of intelligence. And for me, I mean, that led me out of depression. It has helped me deal with anxiety in a much healthier way. Like anxiety doesn't get in my way so much. But it also guided me. I mean, so many good things. It guided me to so many good things that I would never have done if I were listening just to my brain alone. Like buying the house that we're in, it's in the city, but we have a half acre and a creek in the back and lots of natural space nearby. And then, things like finding my way to coaching and working with other people to help them reconnect with their bodies and their calling and their path, and finding my way back to writing. So I've loved to write stories ever since I was, I don't know, 8 years old. I started filling up notebooks with stories. But then when I was 12, I wrote a novel, which I loved. It was really easy to do. I was so excited about it. I entered it into my school's book contest. And then when I got the scores, I get the second to lowest possible score. So I was pretty devastated and stopped writing for a long time after that. But when I reconnected with my body led me back to writing little by little, and eventually led me to write another novel, which was just published in April, which is This Animal Body, which is a lot about how we can reconnect with our bodies in the natural world. But anyway, my body has led me to some pretty amazing things. It has a very clear wisdom. It will very often say like yes to things or no to things that my brain, I don't know, just doesn't pick up on or doesn't catch. So and it's also, our bodies are what connect us to the natural world, because it's a type of knowing that we share with other beings more than our brains. And so it can really connect us with all of the living beings around us as well. So there's just so many great things about the body. And it's probably, of all the things I do with my clients, it's probably the thing that listening more to their bodies is what transforms their lives the most.
Yeah, I love that. Like tapping into the body's wisdom, what the body's trying to tell you. And honestly, it's really tough. Like I feel like I am pretty self-reflective and intuitive and can kind of like tap into it. And it's almost like a muscle. Like it's almost like something that you exercise, like you practice doing it. And then you kind of can pick it up faster and notice it more and notice what your body's telling you. I notice this a lot with food, actually, all the time with food. It could be because I'm a nutritionist, and so, yeah, I just that's probably where it started. But for those people listening, and I actually think of my husband when I think of this, is what about like people who just don't really get that? Like if you were to say like tap into your body's wisdom and what your body wants, like what if they don't know how to do that? And they're just like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know how to listen to what? Like those people who are just really at the beginning of that journey, like what would you say to them?
Yeah, a couple things. That's a great question. And I work with a lot of people who are like to have that response. Like, that sounds great. And what do I do? So one is to remember that we all have this capacity, because I think when we come into the world, we naturally listen to our bodies, but we're trained out of it. We're trained to only listen to our thoughts and our heads and logic and, do only what's logical. So one is just to remember that it's a part of you and you do know how to do it. You just have to relearn it. And the other thing to keep in mind, and I'll get more specific in just a second, but the other thing to keep in mind is it's kind of like a relationship with somebody else. And if somebody else keeps telling you things, but you keep ignoring them and overriding them and doing something else, eventually they're going to get really quiet, right? They're going to just stop telling you. So that's kind of what our body does, is when we ignore it for so long, it gets really quiet. It's subtle to begin with, and it is hard to pick up on. It's almost like a whisper. You have to really, be listening to hear, but it'll eventually it'll kind of go silent. So it takes a little bit of trust building to listen. When you get a sense of what your body wants, you have to say yes to it and act on it to rebuild that trust, to let it know, like, I do want to hear you. I am taking this seriously as much as you can. We can't do it all the time in the world as it is, but yeah, as much as you can. So it's kind of like you have to rebuild that relationship a little bit. Over time, it does get louder and it does get easier to hear. And so for folks who have no idea where to start, what I often do is take them through an exercise where I kind of personalize and build their best case scenario for something in their life, and then a worst case scenario. And as they imagine themselves, kind of like, what's your dream day? If you have their best day ever, imagine yourself having that day and notice what happens in your body. What are the sensations you feel and where? And same thing for, kind of worst case scenario. What would be your worst day ever? And then notice when you imagine yourself in that, what happens in your body. So do you feel a sense of tightness or heaviness in your belly, or does your throat close up? Do you feel like you have a 1,000-pound weight on your back? It's different for everyone. So usually if you can kind of tap into, when things are going really well for you and you're doing just what you love, what are the specific physical sensations you notice, and where do you notice them in your body? And then same thing for just like things you hate and just dread, things that drain you of energy, things you avoid. When you're doing those, what happens in your body?
Yeah, I love that idea of like reflecting on how things feel. It's hard to kind of get those people there who are just don't really talk like that almost. Like I think I say the word feel so much. I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, oh, well, how was your day at work? Oh, you had a hard meeting. Okay. Like, how did that make you feel? Or how do you feel about moving? How do you feel about the party coming up or whatever it is? Like, and so I'm just like so tapped into like feelings, I guess, but there's some people who do not talk like that at all and are like very black and white, like just, not like that at all. And so it's so interesting when, I can think of a couple of people I know like that. And when I talk to them one-on-one and we actually have this opportunity to talk about something, let's say like difficult that they have been through, and we actually get to talk about their feelings, like it's actually very interesting because then they get to open up. And one of the best ways to do that is actually going on a walk with somebody or going on a hike with somebody. There's something very therapeutic about walking beside somebody and opening up versus like, just being like at a restaurant or something. Anyway, I'm going off the deep end here, but
no, absolutely. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And so I just think that's really cool that there is a way for you to tap into your body wisdom. It's never too late. Like you can start learning to do that at any point and reconnect with yourself like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's accessible to anyone. And I've done it with people of lots of different ages. And it's really helpful at any age. And what you can do with it, once you know how your body, I refer to that as how your body says yes and how it says no, based on whether it's something you really enjoy or don't. And just, you can observe over the next couple of weeks. Once you have that baseline, you notice throughout the day, when did your body say yes to something? When did you notice those yes sensations? And what were you doing? And what's your best sense of what your body was saying yes to? And then you can do the same thing, when did you notice elements of your no body, and what was your body saying no to? And people who do that for even just a couple of weeks get so much rich information about things they might want to tweak, ways to make their, life more fulfilling, less stressful, more joyful. It's pretty incredible how much information you can get in just a short period of time.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's the body tries to communicate with you, right? And then we just like shut it down and ignore it, or there's just way too much stimulation that it just gets drowned out, really.
Yeah, exactly. If the body's activated in a stress response, it's almost impossible to hear what your body's trying to tell you, other than, get in a safe space and less stimulation, please. But so that's kind of the first thing. You have to tend to that before you can get to the deeper layer of what the body is saying. But yeah, I mean, it is constantly responding, and I think it also can get louder and louder if we don't listen to it. So that's what happened for me is, my body was telling me things, but I was just ignoring it, doing what I thought I should be doing. And then it gets louder and louder and kind of forces you to pay attention. And for me, the way it forced me to pay attention was just depression and shutdown. For some people, it can be physical pain, like something going wrong in the body can be a sign of that, or that can at least be a part of it. But there's lots of different ways it can get loud. It'll get louder, try to get louder and louder to get our attention if we're not paying attention.
Yeah, it will. Yeah. And then it manifests in different ways, which is just so interesting as well, is like, the repression of emotions, the repression of not listening to your body. And it's like that book, The Body Keeps a Score, kind of like talks about that as well, which is also very fascinating. Speaking of books, you wrote a book. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, thanks. So this is the novel that I was referring to, called This Animal Body. And it's a lot of the stuff that I learned through my struggles with depression. It's about a grad student who is going to become a neuroscientist to try to find a cure for her depression. But on her first day of school, she meets a group of talking animals. who know things she doesn't. So she can't quite dismiss it as a dream, but she can't quite believe that it's real. And so she's trying to figure out what's going on. But it's a lot about what do I wish I had known kind of when I was feeling depressed or going through my 20s. And yeah, it was for me, it was a really lovely return to one of my core loves, which is writing.
Nice. I love that. That sounds like a great story. I want to read it. That sounds awesome. If people want to work with you as a coach and, reconnect to nature and reconnect to themselves with you, where can they do that and how can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me at meredithwalters.com. And if they are interested in coaching, there's a whole page about coaching. It talks about how I work. And if that resonates, they're more than welcome to make a request for a free consultation. Yeah, and they can find out about my book there as well. So yeah.
I love that. Okay, perfect. I will link that in the show notes and on my website so everyone can find you easily. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and just chat everything nature. This was awesome and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed speaking with you and love the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're interested in finding the show notes or the sponsors for this episode, you can do so on my website, which is biohackingbrittany.com. Remember to follow me on Instagram where I'm most active. My handle is @biohackingbrittany. And if you're interested in working together and you want to email me directly, you can do that. My email is info@biohackingbrittany.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and having you tune in next week.